It's the Fitness Lab Pittsburgh podcast, a new episode every week. A podcast about movement, part of making your life complete. Fitness Lab Pittsburgh, aka FitLab PGH, brings you interviews with people in the Pittsburgh area who understand movement is part of what makes life complete. Looking for a new movement idea or just want to hear interesting stories about people who make movement a priority? This is the podcast for you. Whether you consider the gym, dojo, or fitness studio your third place, or just want to learn more about movement, activity, and fitness to enhance your life, give FitLab PGH a listen. We interview locals in the Pittsburgh area who make Pittsburgh a great place to move. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Subscribing is free and gives you notifications when we release new episodes. Each podcast episode will be long enough to pique your interest and short enough to hold your attention. Have an idea for an episode? Know somebody we should interview? Or just want to connect with us? Drop us an email, fitlabpgh@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter or Instagram at fitlabpgh. Already a fan of FitLab PGH? Check out our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast for movement professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers weekly interviews with movement professionals featuring topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope you enjoy our next interview, starting now. Moving to Live brings you movement and exercise tips, stories, and activities from some interesting people involved in the movement field. In the most recent interview, we sat down with Seth Munsey. Seth Munsey is a strength and conditioning coach with disc golf. He talks to us about his path from high school to time in the military and riding on the ambulance to his career now as a strength and conditioning coach for disc golf. Moving to Live is back with another podcast episode. We are a podcast about movement because we believe movement should be treated as a lifestyle. Our main goal is to break down knowledge silos and interview people in the movement profession. Many of them are in different movement professions, but they all have the goal of either getting people to move more or getting people to move better. Some people come by word of mouth. Some people I find by searching the internet, and believe it or not, there actually are some good Instagram posts that you can find some very interesting people. I have to say that today's guest is the first person that I have ever recruited after reading a Wall Street Journal article. There was an article a few weeks back. The Wall Street Journal has a column that I think they come out with every week called What's Your Workout? And they had a workout that Andrew Zimmern, the TV chef from the Food Network, does, which is disc golf. And they mentioned in this article today's guest as a strength and conditioning professional who specializes in disc golf. So I found today's guest, Seth Munsey, on the internet. I contacted him and asked him if he would come on Moving to Live and talk about his background and talk about disc golf and how he got involved in it. He is currently the owner of Disc Golf Strong, and he's generous enough to join us to talk to Moving to Live. So Seth, thanks for taking time to talk to us.
Oh, glad to be here, Ben. Thank you. I appreciate it.
First question I always ask Moving to Live guests is, you're wearing your Disc Golf Strong shirt and you're in the coffee shop or you're in the elevator and somebody looks at it and they say, what do you do? What's your 30-second elevator speech?
I actually get that often, so this is a good question. First, it's what is disc golf? And then what is Disc Golf Strong? Well, I help disc golfers of all ages and abilities and skill levels play strong and healthy disc golf, keep them injury-free, keep them resilient, and help them do what they want to do better and for as long as they can.
And in the latter part of this interview, we're going to talk more about what exactly you do with them and the levels of disc golf. But for somebody who doesn't know, just a simple explanation, what is disc golf?
Yes, disc golf it's played like golf, many similar rules, but we throw people call it a frisbee. We don't call it a frisbee. It looks different. It flies different. So that's why we call it disc versus frisbee golf. But same rules as normal golf, 18 holes, is trying to get the disc in the basket in the fewest throws possible. It is a worldwide sport. There's a couple million people that play it around the world. And there's also a professional side to the sport. Started up in about the 70s, early 70s, and it's growing rapidly every year. So,
and before we find out more about your story, I mean, that's the fact that there's professional disc golf. Is this something that people make their living at it, or is it professional as in some other sports where people actually have another job and they do it on the weekends for a couple $100s?
Yeah, in the beginning of the professional side of the sport, the latter was definitely the case. It was, work full time during the week, play as a professional disc golfer on the weekend in tournaments. But in the last few years, that has rapidly been changing. There are a lot of touring pros that are out there making a living, making, six figures as a professional disc golfer. And that's around the world. And so the number of professional disc golfers that are going out on the road and touring is growing every single year. So there are quite a number now that it is their full-time job.
And for Moving to Live, our ethos is movement is a lifestyle. With disc golf, do they use carts, or is this all walking for the 18 holes?
It's all walking. There are some golf courses where, amateurs, they'll be able to rent a cart at a golf course that has installed disc golf baskets. But on the professional side and in all tournaments, it is all walking.
And I'm sure there's an interesting story here that we're going to get into about how you arrived at this. I'm curious, did you play disc golf growing up, or did you do nothing growing up? One of the things that I find interesting with Moving to Live is finding out if the people that I interview were active growing up and when they were kids, and if they were, was it because mom and dad said, get out the door and don't come back till supper time? Or was it because mom and dad were active and you wanted to keep up with mom and dad?
Yeah, my childhood was very active. I grew up in Southern California near the beach, so I spent a lot of time out at the beach, in the water. My sports growing up were snowboarding, surfing, body surfing, some skateboarding, but a lot of Frisbee, actually. My brother and I and our best friends, we would throw a Frisbee. We didn't necessarily play the sport we didn't call it disc golf at that time. It was just throwing a Frisbee back and forth together. We'd play ultimate. It's pretty much throwing every single day. I had heard of disc golf, but back in the 90s, without the internet, there's no disc golf course nearby. I didn't really, I wasn't able to get online like I can these days and learn all about disc golf and watch disc golf tournaments that have been recorded. So it was really just out throwing a Frisbee every single day. We were outdoor kids. We didn't come home till the lights came on, and sometimes even after that. And it was a very active childhood. And my parents were somewhat active, but nothing like my brother and I.
And I'm curious, what was it about the throwing the Frisbee that was the attraction? I mean, I know as a kid, I was the one walking around with the baseball mitt or the football. The Frisbee was only a little bit, and maybe a little bit in college on the quad before it was time to go do something else.
Mm-hmm. That just seeing the disc fly in the air, being able to shape your shots with the disc, how much, effort put into it. If you're trying to float it into, I was trying to float a disc into my brother so he could catch it between his legs in the air, or, he would throw it and throw a huge bomb through the air. And so I could run and dive for it at the beach. So that was just, it really caught our attention and filled up our days.
And I know if I talk to a lot of guests, they have the traditional path of they go to high school, maybe they're playing a team sport or an individual sport, and they go to college and play that sport, or they don't. But at some point they find exercise science or medicine or physical therapy. From reading your bio, which I had the advantage of prior to interviewing you, your path that you followed was a little bit different. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you selected that path to travel after graduating from high school?
Yeah, absolutely. So after graduating high school, I joined the U.S. Coast Guard and went off to boot camp 2 weeks after I turned 18, and was stationed after boot camp in San Francisco at a small boat search and rescue station. So I spent 4 years there from 99 to 03, got out, thought I was going to be a firefighter. And so I went to the fire academy, worked as an EMT on an ambulance for a couple of years, running 911 and as a part-time firefighter. And during my time on an ambulance, I was working crazy hours. We would get up for calls in the middle of the night, and I went from, a lean, strong, healthy, like 170 to 210 before I knew it. I was sitting on an ambulance. There was a lot of stress, very little sleep, sick all the time. I had stopped working out. I didn't really know much about the fitness profession because I was really focused on, emergency medicine and firefighting. But I realized that while I was on the ambulance, I needed to pass the firefighter physical tests, and that the current state I was in was not going to do that for me.
And I'm curious, for those people who are not involved in firefighting, what was that test, or what was it that you were required to do?
Yeah, so there's a couple tests. There's one called the CPAT. It was the Candidate Physical Ability Test, and then there was another one. The names is not coming to me right now, but it was basically we would have to drag a dummy. We'd have to, in full turnout gear, we'd have to carry bottles up and down a flight of stairs, couple flights of stairs. We'd have to pull hose. We'd have to do I think it was like 7 to 10 tests. It was quite a while ago now, so I can't remember fully exactly what was in the test. But it was a very physically demanding test. So I had practiced it before, and I did horrible. So I knew I needed to change what I was doing. I needed to lose some body fat and start working out. And so that's what I started doing, and lost about 35 pounds while working on the ambulance. And in that time, found a love for fitness and a passion for, learning how to improve my physical capabilities, and kind of moved from there. A friend of mine, I needed to get off the ambulance, and a friend of mine that I'd worked with on the ambulance, he was working at a 24-hour fitness, and he said, "Hey, if you want to get a job as a personal trainer, you should start studying for your tests. We can get you a job here." So I thought, okay, I'll do that while I'm trying to apply for firefighting jobs. I will go ahead and do that. Rest is history. Fell in love with what I was learning and what I was doing. Left the firefighting EMT career to the side and pursued full time as a fitness professional.
And at some point, you made the decision to go on and get a 4-year degree. What was that path, or how did you decide, hey, this isn't enough, I need to get more education? Was it, I just want the initials, or was it the realization that you could maybe learn at a different level? What was it?
Yeah, I was very nervous about going to college. I had horrible grades in high school. And so I thought, okay, when I go to college, I'm going to fail miserably. But I felt like I had a thirst for knowledge, though. And so I felt like, okay, this is something I need to do. I want to know as much as I can about how to help people in this career path. So I signed up for college, and I fell in love with it, and with the education side of it. Went to Cal State Fullerton, and it was really funny. I went from barely graduating high school with like almost the lowest GPA you can graduate with, and then when I went to college, I actually graduated summa cum laude, which is so crazy to think that. It really shows when you're really passionate about something and you want to learn. You're like, okay, I thought I had learning issues when I was in high school, and it wasn't. It just was I wasn't passionate about it. And once I found that passion in college with a kinesiology degree, things really opened up for me.
I don't think you can underestimate the importance of being interested. I know I tell people when I went to college, my first 2 semesters was a 2-1 or were a 2-1 and a 1.889 because I had absolutely no classes in what my major was, which was health and physical education, emphasis in allied health. And it's amazing my sophomore year when my grades change, and friends of mine often say, why did it change? And my joke is it got my dad off my case from saying, you really ought to study, but it actually was, there were things that you were interested in. And I think when you find a topic you're interested in, whether it's in school or whether it's a certification or an area of fitness or movement that you think there's more to be learned here, it really doesn't seem like work, even though it's time consuming.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it definitely didn't feel like work to me. While I was in college, I went to college late from being in the military and spent time on an ambulance. So I was, in my late 20s, early 30s when I went through college, and had a wife and a kid and a mortgage at that time. So I really, there was a lot of motivation coming from many different directions to be able to learn and grow in what I was doing.
And again, because I have the little cheat sheet, which is the bio and the info I ask you to fill out, you had the opportunity to work in professional sports. And you and I both know from talking to strength and conditioning professionals and also from talking to students, so many people, it's like their dream job is they want to be a strength coach for a major college, or they want to be a strength coach for professional sport. And it's difficult to get there, but you were there and you made the decision to say, hey, this isn't really where I want to go. I want to go in a different direction. How did that come about? And was that partially because you had the wife and the kid and you recognized that, hey, I want to have a little bit of a family life too?
Yeah, I did. I definitely wanted to have a family life. The strength coach that I was working for, Sean Skane, he was with the Anaheim Ducks. He was gone all the time. He was traveling, and I know he loves it, and he is very passionate and good at what he does. And I loved it as well, but I knew that, it probably at that moment of my life was not the right direction for me, moving forward with having a wife and a kid and a mortgage and not being able to travel. But it was a great experience. I did it during my senior year of college, and it's really helped transfer over to what I do now, even in disc golf.
And I think what's interesting about this is Seth Munsey has a very different path than many people. You went and you opened your own facility. Again, this is something that typically if you talk to people in the health and fitness field, they want to have a facility. And you had a pretty large facility.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about how that came about and why you made the decision to move on from there.
Yeah, so while I was with the Ducks, Sean, Coach Skane had told me about the RKC Russian Kettlebell Challenge and said that it was one of the best certifications at the time that he had gone through, and felt like that was something I really wanted to do. So I trained for the RKC, really put in a lot of time and effort into it. And after I received my RKC and I moved on from the Ducks, we moved up to Monterey, California, which is where I reside now, where my wife is from. And I thought, what, I'm going to use the knowledge that I've gained. I'm going to open a facility up that kind of focuses around kettlebells and sandbags and, other types of unconventional training and bring that to this area because there was nothing like that here. So I opened up my gym. It was a 3,200 square foot facility called Iron Republic. And I operated that for 4 years, and it was great. I worked with a lot of the general population, just helping people, move better and feel better and really learn to enjoy movement. My motto there was live life strong. And it was all about, making sure that what you do can transfer over into your life. And I closed that down 2 years ago to go full time into Disc Golf Strong. But it was a very impactful and influential part of my career and my story, and learned so much from it.
We're talking with Seth Munsey. He is the owner of Disc Golf Strong. Seth, you were telling us a few minutes ago about how when you were riding on the ambulance, you realized that you'd gained some weight and you would not be able to pass the test that required for firefighting. I'm curious, when you made the decision to start working out then, were you using the unconventional training tools such as kettlebells and sandbags, or was it more the traditional, I'm going to the gym and hopping on the Stairmaster and lifting traditional weights, or even using machines?
Yeah, in the beginning, it was a lot of body weight. I didn't have much knowledge on what to do, so I went to a lot of my calisthenics from the boot camp days, from the military days. So I was looking for ways to just fit it into in between calls. So I would be at the ambulance station, and I would just do some body weight squats, do some push-ups, do some planks, fit it in where I could and try to just do it throughout the day. When I did go to the gym, it was just picking up some dumbbells and say, okay, I think I should do some rowing, and I think I should do some dumbbell chest press. I really didn't know what I was doing, but I felt like doing something was better than doing nothing. And then I would also, do a lot of cardio at that time, get on the elliptical and walk, or on the stair climber and walk.
I think for people who are listening to this, who are amateur aficionados, maybe not in the profession, I know I've had this conversation with a past guest before, Dr. J. Dawes. We have a tendency in the fitness field to overcomplicate things and say, there are right ways to do this and wrong ways, which is true from an injury point of view. But I think what you're describing there is you took your activity and you increased your activity. And we haven't really talked about this, but I'm assuming you slightly modified your diet. And amazingly, you lost weight and got stronger.
Absolutely. Yep. That's it. It's finding what works for you. And that's what I really try to do as a strength professional, is help people just find what works for them. I always say to myself, it's not about me, it's about them, and meeting them where they are currently at. And, it's get out and do something. They always say that the hardest part of going out for a walk is tying your shoes. Just is putting on your shoes, tying your shoes. Just get out there and do something. Everything counts.
You mentioned as a kid, you and your brother spent a lot of time throwing the Frisbee around. Along this path that you've taken, where did you first find the opportunity to play disc golf? And is it something you thought, wow, this is something I really enjoy? Or was it something that you kind of had to grow into?
Yeah, so when I moved to Monterey 6 years ago, I found on social media that there was a local disc golf club, and I had heard of disc golf, but like I said earlier, I wasn't too familiar with it, and showed up, met a few people, and right away, almost instantly became very passionate about it. Disc golf is the disc golf community is very welcoming, and being out there's activities going on all the time on disc golf courses. So I started spending 2, 3, 4 days a week out on the disc golf course. And like I said, fell in love with it right away. And anybody that I introduce disc golf to, for the most part, starts to see how quickly it can become addicting for them.
I can see with the walking of the courses that just that alone can get people a fair amount of movement. For somebody who's coming from a non-disc golf background and a background that's different from what you have of throwing the Frisbee around, but if somebody is a fairly good athlete, how long does it take them to become fairly good? I don't mean like elite level amateur or even going professional, but where they can go and not snap the disc over their knee because they get frustrated by the numerous shots like we think of with traditional golf.
Yes, it's much different than traditional golf. You can start to develop some competency in your disc golf throw pretty quickly. Anybody that I've ever brought out that even has never really thrown a Frisbee before, pretty quickly they start to see that they can, get the disc down the fairway a little bit and start to enjoy it. I've seen people go from never throwing a Frisbee to being able to go out there and play a round, throw a round that they feel very good with, in a few weeks. Really, they're not going to be able to compete on a high level with that, but it's something you can start to find success at very quickly. And I think that's another reason why disc golf is one of the fastest growing sports out there, because you can start to develop competency pretty quickly. There's a lot of community involvement. You're out there, before you know it, a lot of your friends start to become disc golfers, and there's an exercise component, and also there's a meditative component. I go out there and play solo rounds, and in disc golf we say it's a walk in the woods with a purpose. So yeah, that's a few of the many reasons why disc golf is very big and impactful in my life and in many others as well.
I know there's a growing body of research out there that shows that people who exercise outside find it beneficial, as you said, not only from the physical aspect, but also the mental or the meditative aspect. And I can understand from that standpoint, people saying, boy, this is something I want to take up, the sense of community where you know that maybe every Tuesday there's a foursome that you're going to meet and do that. And you can be outside for 2, 3, 4 hours. Where the idea of saying, hey, I think this is a business model where I can have a business with strength and conditioning for people playing disc golf. How did you come up with that? And then when you first started throwing the idea around, what was your wife's response and what were your friends in the profession's response?
Yeah, so I remember the moment I first thought of Disc Golf Strong. I was out playing, and I noticed, I started looking around and noticing a lot of my friends had injuries, and they were still playing through them, and they had no idea what to do for their injuries, and they weren't doing a warm up or anything. And it came to my thought process. I thought, I have the knowledge to be able to help them. This is something I'm passionate about. This is something they're passionate about. And I really feel called to give them the information they need to be successful, and lower their injury rate. And so I went home to my wife and I said, Tiffany, I think I want to start doing some strength and conditioning in the sport of disc golf. And she was like, is that even a thing? I said, not yet. Not yet. I looked it up. There was nobody out there talking to the disc golf community. And so I told her I was going to start looking into it. And that's what I did. I started, gathering some data and talking to other disc golfers and just handing out some information here and there on things that they could do. And from that point on, Disc Golf Strong was born. And looking at where the sport was, and it's almost, we almost feel like it's the national sport of Scandinavian countries. I'm actually going overseas in 2 weeks for a month. And in countries in Finland, I'll be in Finland, Sweden, Norway, Estonia, and Denmark. And they are playing disc golf like crazy there. And so that was 3 years ago. And it's gotten to this point now where I'm traveling for the sport. So it's exciting.
And one of the things that people who are not involved in the movement field don't understand is they don't understand why you need to train to do a sport. I mean, the common thing for people who run who don't have the knowledge is, well, I don't need to lift weights. My legs get enough of a workout running. And as professionals, we know that's not true. What was your friend's reaction or the disc golf community originally when you went to them and said, hey, I know this is bothering you. You have these nagging injuries. I think I can help you. Was it, oh, Seth, this is his profession, strength and conditioning. Yeah, this is good. Or it's like, go away. This is just something I have to live with because I'm getting old.
Yeah. One of the first videos I put out on my YouTube channel was how to safely pick your disc up off the ground. And it was on the disc golf Reddit threads. A lot of people were laughing about it, saying, is this guy serious? But there was actually a lot of people coming on to defend me, say, hey, what he's saying is if we're bending over to pick up a disc repeatedly over and over and over again, it's not how much that the disc only weighs 175 grams. It's that repeated flexion of our lower back, that's going to cause the injuries in the long term. And so there was, in the beginning, people were kind of lukewarm to it. They weren't really sure what it was about. But, when I started Disc Golf Strong, I came out just saying, hey, let's look at other sports. What do other sports do? They all do a warm-up. Let's just start doing a warm-up. I think we can all agree that warming our bodies up before we throw would not be a bad idea. So I didn't come out with Disc Golf Strong saying, hey, we need to do in-season training, off-season training, all that. I didn't. I kept it very simple. Said, here's some basic moves you can do before you throw to warm up your shoulders, to warm up your hips, get the blood flowing, get the nervous system firing up. And that is how I really started to make some inroads right away into the disc golf community, because they didn't see it as, okay, this guy is we went from doing nothing to this guy's telling us to do all this stuff. And, this is why we're not being able to play disc golf the best, because he's telling us we're doing all these things wrong. I just came and said, hey, let's just do something that most other athletes will consider a good thing. Let's do a little bit of a warm up. And I didn't have any equipment in the beginning. I showed everything that was body weight, because I wanted the disc golfers to watch a video of mine at their computer, push their chair away from the desk and get on the ground and start doing something right away. Not say like, okay, this guy's coming out and he's got these expensive programs to buy, and I need to go buy kettlebells, I need to buy sandbags, or I need to go get an expensive gym membership. It was really just things that are very accessible, and really trying to meet the disc golf community where it was at the moment. Not come in with the knowledge that I had, but and say, hey, here's all this stuff you can do, but just where is the disc golf community at right now? Let me meet them where they're at with something that they can just bite into right away and slowly grow from there.
And I know Disc Golf Strong does education, which, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, you're going to get the opportunity to go to Scandinavian countries. Do you also work individually or in groups with disc golf players yourself doing strength and conditioning?
I do, yes. So I work both on the professional side of the sport, and I work individually with around 35 professional athletes. And then I also have on the recreational side of the sport, I have an app. It's a Disc Golf Strong app. And so I launched that a few months back, and that is a membership-based app that people can log into and get their training programs and more educational resources for disc golf training. So so both sides of the sport. So, and I tour throughout the year to professional disc golf tournaments.
And I know that it's very common in the strength and conditioning field for especially young coaches to roll out this is what fill in your favorite professional team or high-level college team is doing for training. So this is what we're going to do for maybe somebody who isn't at that level. Without going into all of the details and stealing all of your thunder, your programming that you use on your app for the recreational players versus what you do for the professional players who, quite honestly, as you said, are making upwards of six figures or more doing that. How does the programming differ between the two of them in broad-based terms?
Really, at this point, it doesn't differ too much. And that's because, with disc golf, even on the professional side of the sport, their skill age is very high. A lot of them have been playing disc golf for a long time, but their training age is, very low. So they haven't, unlike baseball and football and, many other sports where there's a culture of training and getting in the gym when you're young and really building up, throughout those years, your strength and conditioning. The disc golf professional even really needed that foundational work, like what is a hip hinge? What is a squat pattern? Things like that. So they would be able to get out on the course and, throw a disc 500, 600 feet, but then get in the gym, they were still starting out with the foundational core work and the movement patterns. So that's where I started with everybody, is really building those foundations of, okay, what does a disc golfer need, both either as a pro or as a recreational athlete, and build from the ground up for both sides of the sport.
And I would think, I know you described with your disc golf playing, you find it very meditative. I would think for people who have high pressure jobs or a lot of family responsibilities, just the opportunity to get out and play around and not hurt can have huge mental aspects and really improve their overall quality of life. Have you had clients or people who are at the amateur level comment on that?
Absolutely. That one of the best things about disc golf is not really even just watching a disc fly through the air after you've thrown it. It really is about being out with other people. It's about still feeling like you can be a little competitive beyond high school and college sports. It's about blowing off steam and stress from work. It's about being outdoors in nature. There are so many aspects to disc golf besides just throwing a disc, which is why so many people are taking it up. And really, a lot of times when I've had a conversation with recreational athletes, disc golf athletes who have had an injury from disc golf, the first thing they really say is not like, oh, I hate that I can't play right now because my elbow hurts. It's all my best friends are not disc golfers. This is what I do. I'm feeling depressed because I can't be out there enjoying what I love and being out in nature. So absolutely, it's something I hear from a lot of people, how impactful it is on the meditative side of the sport. There's actually a book called Zen and the Art of Disc Golf that I highly recommend. It's a quick read, but it really is about how you can create, use disc golf to really find more meditation and mindfulness in your life.
And I know I pulled up some YouTube videos of disc golf and some of your videos. And as you mentioned, the very good golfers can throw the disc 400, 500 yards. But I'm sure there's some people that meet you and they see the t-shirt and they say, dude, it's basically walking and throwing a Frisbee. What do you need to condition for that? So I think a really good question to comment on it and discuss a little bit is, what are the injuries that people engaged in disc golf? You've taught them the hip hinge, which I think we could all benefit from, and having a reminder. I know my joke with people is I herniated one of my discs bending down to pick up after my dog. Now, that's what did it, but it was poor movement practices years before that. But still, now I'm super, super conscious about it. So other than that, when somebody says, like, what are injuries that disc golfers get? And, it's not a mainstream sport, but I think from what you're describing, this is something that people say, well, I don't like to run. Well, I don't like to go to the gym. It's like, wait, I'm outside. I get to walk. I get to see wildlife. And occasionally I get to throw something. That sounds pretty cool. What do I have to worry about? Or what are some injuries that I might see if I decide, hey, I'm going to go hardcore and play 3 or 4 times a week?
Yeah, the great thing about disc golf is its accessibility. And the bad thing about disc golf is its accessibility. You can play every day, even if you shouldn't. It's really hard to get a bunch of people together for a game of, pick up baseball or even basketball or football, but you can grab your disc and get out to the course every single day if you want. And there's a lot of people that do that, and they do it very quickly once they find their passion for disc golf. There's a lot of people I speak with that they'll message me and say, hey, I've got an injury going on. I've been playing disc golf for 6 months, and I've been playing almost every day for the last 6 months since the first time I threw. And I'm like, oh, well, that's great. I'm glad you found a passion in disc golf, and it's helped you lose weight, and it's helped you, find an active community that you can be a part of. But you're doing something repetitive every single day, and our bodies were not designed to throw a disc every single day or perform that repetitive task. So there's a lot of injuries you get to shoulders, elbows, lower backs, hips, knees, because for the average recreational disc golf athlete, they're trying to throw it as far as they can. And it's right after they got out of the car, which is right after they got off, work. and they haven't done any sort of strength training. They don't have, good joint stability, any reflexive stability. Their mobility is not where it should be. So we get a lot of injuries, like I said, that you're going to find in normal sports. We don't really get any really contact injuries at all, mostly non-contact injuries, but it's just improving your overall stability, strength, mobility is going to make you be able to play disc golf longer.
And for those people who are playing at the professional level or the high level, elite level, we know that in sports like tennis and baseball that are unilateral sports, that there are adaptations that are not necessarily good. The body's very plastic and it can withstand those adaptations. And then you have problems like labral tears. You have problems like ulnar collateral ligament damage. Is the sport mature enough now where people are playing enough and have played long enough where you're starting to see those sorts of things at the higher level? Or are we still hopefully before that, and following programming like you have, maybe will reduce the occurrence of that?
Yes, we're definitely seeing a lot of injuries at the professional level. Right now with Disc Golf Strong, we're having to be really reactive to all of this. Eventually it'll be more proactive, but we're really reactive right now because we got a lot of shoulder issues in the professional side of the sport. They're throwing every single day. And, I don't have the data that shows this, but, I showed the disc golf throw to a very knowledgeable coach that coaches in professional baseball for professional baseball pitchers. And he looked at it and was like, wow, I'm amazed at the throwing motion. It's similar to what I would see in a baseball pitcher. And so we're getting a lot of internal impingement, the posterior shoulder capsule, a lot of knee issues with so much torque going into the knee. And we actually, the PDGA, the Professional Disc Golf Association, just created in the beginning of this year, the PDGA Medical Committee, which I was selected to be on, to really start looking at the injury rate in our professional athletes and how to curb it, and start to be more proactive for our athletes' health.
I'm curious, at that elite level, how many tournaments are people playing a year? And is it a similar format to like PGA Tour where there's four days of actual playing?
Yeah, so for the touring pros, the season starts in the middle of February and it ends at the end of October. And they are pretty much touring the entire time. And you get a lot of the younger players. They will be playing 30 plus tournaments in a year. And you'll get some more of the seasoned veterans that have knocked that down to 20 to 25 tournaments a year. But when they're on the road, like they just finished up a big tournament, a 3-day tournament in Oregon, and they'll only have 1 or 2 days off and that's travel time, and before they have to start practicing for their next tournament. So they're throwing 5-6 days a week.
And with these throws, I would imagine that there are some throws they throw as hard as they can, and there's other throws where they take something off of it depending on the course, depending on the hole. But for somebody like you who's a recreational player, in a round of disc golf, how many times are you throwing the disc? Obviously, as few as possible.
Yeah, as few as possible, hopefully. So most courses, like the course this weekend that the pros played at up in Oregon, par was 61. So they're hopefully throwing it less than 61 times in one round. So 18 holes, they'll throw max power drives most of those holes. And really for the females, the FPO, the Female Professional Open Division, they are throwing from the same tee pads most of the time as the males. And so they are throwing usually double the amount of max power drive. So at least 18 full power drive, sometimes more.
And people are listening to this, and I know they can appreciate the sport. It's not just a walk in the woods with the throwing, and the fact that the throwing is very similar to a baseball motion. You mentioned that they finish up a tournament, they may travel. The most pros are throwing every day. Do the pros or people who are amateurs and are working to get better, when they throw, do you go to the disc golf driving range, or do you just play to get better?
A lot of pros, they will go to a park, or they'll, like, I go to a local high school football field, and when no one's around, and that's where I'll do a lot of we call it field work. And so you'll get a lot of athletes both on the pro and the recreational side of the sport that go to find some sort of park or area where they can really practice a lot of field work, because we have, with our discs in our bag, we're throwing max power drives. We're throwing what we call approach shots, usually 200 feet or less. So we need to practice all those different shots. So we can do them on the course, but we like to also do them at other areas as well.
One of the great things about Moving to Live and the sister podcast, Fit Lab Pittsburgh, is I get to meet and talk about movement and activity with so many different people. You've been describing disc golf, and one of the things that immediately comes to mind is there an adaptive version is the wrong word, but are there people who are in wheelchairs who play disc golf also?
I would not doubt it. It is definitely a sport that, can be enjoyed by all in some capacity. There is a professional division where I believe he is 97 years old, playing disc golf. There's a lot of people. We consider it a lifetime sport. So it was the senior disc golf games, I believe, what it was called. It was down in Southern California last week, and there was someone, I think he's 97, but there's players in their 80s and their 70s. The deaf disc golf community is very huge, and so as far as wheelchairs, I'm not sure, but I would not doubt it.
And I think what's really interesting and neat about what you just described is somebody who's 97, not only do they have the range of motion and strength to throw the disc, but they have the muscular endurance and capacity to actually walk the 18 holes, which is very impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Very impressive.
We've had the good fortune to be talking with Seth Munsey. He is the owner of Disc Golf Strong. We're going to have extensive show notes and show you links to his page where he's got a few videos. And I think he's done a great job of not only describing disc golf and the demands of people who are playing at the elite level, but the fact that it is a sport, as he noted just a few moments ago, a sport of a lifetime. And the ethos of Moving to Live and Fit Lab Pittsburgh is movement is a lifestyle, not just an activity. Seth, I'm really glad I saw the Wall Street Journal article and reached out to you, and you were willing to share a little bit more about disc golf. I think it's one of those sports that so often people just figure, I'm too old to play a sport. And if you can play this at 97, I think that's something we need to emphasize promoting and making more people aware of it. So thank you for taking time to talk to Moving to Live.
Absolutely. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for having me on the podcast. And I do really encourage the listeners to go out and give disc golf a try. It is one of those sports that, like you said, you can do for a lifetime, and find a great community as well.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of FitLab PGH, brought to you by Moving to Live. Intro and exit music is Marathon Man by Jason Shaw. Check out the show notes for contact info for our latest guests, links to other information mentioned in the episode, and links to our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast about movement and exercise for professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Your free subscription gets you notified when we release a new episode. Questions, comments, suggestions? Email us at fitlabpgh@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at fitlabpgh and like us on Facebook. If you enjoy our podcasts, please tell your friends about us and consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Make FitLab PGH a go-to place to learn more about movement in the Pittsburgh area. Until next time, keep on moving.